So this week on the Encrypted Economy, I had JW Verret, who is the founder of Crypto Freedom Labs. Now, 2022 was a rough year for crypto. If you use prices, fraud, cybercrime, politics, regulation as a barometer, leverage is gone. SBF, who bought influence in US politics, he turned out to be corrupt, and he still pulls levers with major media publishers, or at least so it seems. More importantly, the enemies of crypto have their knives out, denouncing innovation as being useless and merely a ploy for profiteers. Things look bleak. Does that mean we abandon the core values of crypto and financial privacy? I taped this episode before the FTX collapsed. I taped it just as Gabe Shapiro released a draft of the Stamina bill, so things changed a little bit since then. But JW's cause doesn't. It doesn't really matter what's gone on in the last month. He's a tireless advocate for privacy, financial privacy, and digital assets. For JW, the issues are much bigger than current failures of the market. He is concerned about the power of governments to censor their citizens and the citizens of the rest of the world, by extension, under the guise of protection or subjective perspective of the common good. He is concerned about how far governments will need to go in curtailing their citizens' rights to personal and financial privacy in the interest of protection. JW is a libertarian. Now, whether you agree with JW or not, it's important that you realize that this matters less than the critical counterbalancing role he plays in what is often a one-sided debate that are now being held with regards to the future of crypto. This week alone, a spokesman for the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, stated that it values communication privacy more than financial privacy in a conference well attended. Why would they say that? Now, I may not have always agreed with all the causes of the ACLU in the past, but that's a good thing. Sometimes we take our rights for granted and are willing to make trade-offs because it's convenient, because it's comfortable, because we agree with something that may be more narrow but suits us, while missing the bigger picture of the fundamental rights. That's the way I want you to listen to this episode. The Crypto Freedom Labs cause is as important now as it's ever been, because freedom and financial privacy are in fact under assault. Now you may say, and you may make qualifications, but if that's the case, you're missing the point. You need to listen to this with open ears and to question your comfort levels and think about the underlying values that are at issue. Crypto Freedom Labs has now released a whole NFT collection to help them raise funding. I encourage you to visit their site, Crypto Freedom Lab. And there's also been some good news since this was released. JW was appointed to the board of Zcash Foundation, a point that we discussed briefly on the episode. So again, if you enjoy this episode, please share it. I encourage you to keep coming back. November may have been bleak, and maybe it's a tough time in the crypto markets, but don't forget why we're all here. Thanks so much. Welcome to the Encrypted Economy, a weekly podcast featuring discussions exploring the business, laws, regulation, security, and technologies relating to digital assets and data. I am Eric Hess, founder of Hess Legal Counsel. I've spent decades representing regulated exchanges, broker-dealers, investment advisors, and all matter of fintech companies for all things touching electronic trading, with a focus on new and developing technologies. Great. JW, welcome to the Encrypted Economy. I don't know how JW sleeps. He's touched so many different things. I'm not even quite sure how to introduce him, but I will note that Jacob Robinson had him on the Law of Code podcast. So if you're listening to these podcasts to this podcast, definitely encourage you to listen to that one as well. We're going to try to take it back from there. But JW, before we begin, why don't we do a little bit of background? Try to summarize. I don't know how, but you've had quite the storied career so far. So
well, thanks, Eric.
We'll do the drive-by.
Yeah, sure, man. Thanks, Eric. I've like you mentioned, Law of Code podcast. It's always good to cite them. I've learned a lot from them in my journey into crypto. Learned a lot from that podcast. Learned a lot from the encrypted economy, especially coming to it as a lawyer, trying to learn about crypto as a lawyer and learn how to get involved in the community. I've learned a ton from a lot of podcasts. And I love that you're as excited as I am about privacy too, because privacy and encryption, because a lot of people in crypto forget about the encryption part, right? But you always dig deep there, which is always a lot of fun.
That's the core of it all. Yeah. It's all based on encryption.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, and which means privacy is at the core of it all.
Which means privacy. Privacy is the core of it all.
That's right. Yeah. So my background, I'm a lawyer and a forensic accountant. So I do a ton of things. Mostly because you can see above me, I've got four young boys under the age of 10. So in my 20s, I became a law professor because I was like, wow, this is great. It's a lot better than working at a big firm. And it was good when I was 27, making associate salary and I don't have to work that hard, right? And then I got to be in my late 30s and I had four kids and I was like, oh shit, I need like two or three more jobs to add to the job that I have. So I started doing a lot more work. All along, I've been excited about being a professor and teaching securities, corporate banking law, and teaching accounting. And it's fun to be a law professor in DC because you get to get involved in policy issues. So I was involved. I started teaching in 2008 in the middle of the financial crisis. So I got really involved on the policy side, doing some think tank stuff, taking a libertarian view to financial regulation. So fighting against the bailouts, fighting against the Dodd-Frank Act, fighting for crowdfunding, fighting for the fintech charter. So as you can see, my record is 0-4 basically on policy stuff. Every fight I get involved with is a desperate fight against big entrenched, TradFi interests and their alliance with regulation. So of course, I became interested in the crypto policy fight a couple years ago, and got involved there in a few different ways, and in trying to get involved in as many ways as I can. I'm really excited about the potential for privacy, excited about the potential to upend the traditional financial system and kind of empower the people and take down the too big to fail banks. That was in the Genesis block, right? For Bitcoin.
That's in the Genesis block.
It's in the Genesis
Awesome.
block, man. So while I was like testifying, like I hate the bailouts, Satoshi was like, you know what? I'll just invent new money as the answer, and that was a lot more productive, I think. So I'm just along for the ride to help out where I can and make space for innovators to build what they're building.
So I think when JW gets involved in something, he's all in, right? So he's thrown himself at issues. So we're going to work. We're going to start off with XRP because that one you were involved in early, outspoken advocate, and here we are, still waiting, waiting. But why don't you give us a little bit of background and where you think we are with XRP?
Yeah, and well, to be clear, not advocate for XRP. No comment on the chain, the token, all that. Critic of the SEC's case against Ripple and XRP.
There you go.
Very critical of it on the basis of two arguments. One, just using the Howey test as it stands, I think it's a stretch for the commission. And then two, I think this is an opportunity for the Supreme Court to look at various circuit courts that have stretched Howey beyond the original 46 case and hopefully pare it back. And I think eventually we're going to get there because Ripple's already spent $100 million. I mean, why not take it all the way to SCOTUS and all that happens?
Seriously. Do you think Congress even wants to touch the judicial interpretation of what constitutes a security?
Some in Congress do. Our diehard pro-crypto guys like Representative Emmer want to. I think even Representative McHenry would if he could. It's just hard to get that past the finish line. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think there are a lot of people who would like to see it happen, but I don't think there's an Overton window for that in the Congress. But I have a lot of hopes for challenge in the courts because I think that the libertarian fight right now is in the courts because there's a lot of shift in doctrine against the administrative state that moves our way, and it's a good time to bring challenges. I mean, just yesterday, the CFPB's funding model was invalidated by the Fifth Circuit. I love the Fifth Circuit. The circuit is what's going to save the republic, man.
Yeah, I mean, because we know that there would be some further extension of regulatory powers there, and their funding was sort of, I don't know, questionable. I haven't dived into it because, Gabriel Shapiro released the DCCPA yesterday, so that consumed more of my attention. But back to Ripple. I actually in the last couple of days I've heard rumblings that there's a settlement afoot. I've also heard that some have posited that that Ripple should settle with the SEC on the grounds that XRP was a security for the time period in question, but be silent on whether it currently is a security. I don't know why you'd spend $100 million to get that, But what do you think of that? Would XRP have like pushed it forward to basically just say, don't hassle us going forward, but we'll give you the win on what happened in the past?
Yeah, when you look through some of the list of existing Section 11 cases against crypto founders and developers, there are a lot of settlements where it was just offer them their money back, and during a bull market, everybody's like, no, you know what? I love my token. I don't want the initial investment back because I would lose money off of it. Right? That calculus probably changes in a bear market, but the SEC's settlement posture has changed. I don't think they really do that anymore. Just offer their money back and go away. Look, it's just not possible. I don't know the settlement calculus for Ripple, and I won't second guess that because they're in a tough position. But in terms of like a settlement based on just come in and register, the phrase that Gary Gensler likes to use all the time, it's just not possible, right? I mean, well as I do, all the ways in which you can't register if you wanted to. You can't register the token, especially the token, because the token's not a firm. It's not like you don't own the network. The foundations, books are not interesting to the token holder because they don't care about the lease you have for the office and the few people working there. But you can't put the network on your books because that's not GAAP because you don't control it. So it's this kind of fanciful thing of just register. But we all know what would that 10K really look like. I don't even know who would sign it. There's no CFO or CEO or board most of the time to sign it. So I don't even know who would sign the 10K.
So what's your odds on a settlement? Do you want to go down that road or no? Too dangerous. You had to give percentages.
Given the politics, I think the odds are low. I would say the odds are low that the SEC would really be willing to settle in any kind of way that would be workable.
Yeah. I kind of I prefer that actually. Take it to the end. You've had the battle up to this point. It'd be such a shame if both sides just said, oh, all right, just.
Yeah, those odds will change if the SEC comes out tomorrow and says, you know what, here's a path to registration that's a unique crypto path that takes into account all the technical issues. Then that calculus changes. But until that, the odds are low.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to shift gears to one of your current projects. That's pretty fascinating. One of many examples of JW's twist on advocacy. So everybody knows what happened with Tornado Cash,
Yeah.
and JW. I'll flip it to you, but you wrote a book on financial privacy that itself may be subject to sanctioning. But I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, so I'm working on a book. It's not finished, but I'm working on a book on financial privacy. So one of the chapters was going to be about Tornado Cash. So it's a book about how to use privacy tools, coins like Zcash and Monero, tools like Tornado Cash, and a tool that I really love, the Whirlpool Samurai and Sparrow wallets that implement Whirlpool coin joins, and Aztec and the privacy, the limited privacy of Bitcoin Lightning, which is very limited, and just kind of talk about all those tools and Railgun, and talk about those tools, and then talk about how they're going to upend the law. Talk about how the law is not ready for truly private money outside of the traditional banking system. Law and forensic accounting are both kind of addicted to bank accounts and credit card histories that are easily subpoenaable. They're not ready for the day that comes when, in divorce court or judgments, somebody says, "You know what? I was hacked, Your Honor. The money's all gone," and there's no way, there's no way to know if that's true or that's not true. And we're going to hear the "I was hacked, Your Honor" defense pretty often, and you can put a lot of pressure on somebody, but if there's no way to prove that it's not true, and if they're willing to lie about what they have, um, that changes the civil justice system completely, right? So I'm doing a book about that, and I think it's cool. So as I'm sitting down to get ready on the Tornado Cash chapter, I read, the code's been sanctioned. Oh man, I got to rewrite that chapter. That's a real pain in the ass. But it also just such a shame for everybody on Ethereum that they lose the ability to transact privately. It's an injustice, so I got pretty hot about it. So I told my family, I said, "Hey, just so you know, I'm gonna apply to OFAC for a exemption to restart the Tornado Cash code. This code that I don't know, it was sanctioned because North Koreans used it for money laundering." And my family was like, "You're gonna do what? What are you gonna? Could you go to jail for that?" And I was like, "No, no, no. I'm just gonna write a letter to OFAC asking for an exemption. That's it." And mentioning the harm that I've been caused because I want to use the tool. I want to write about the tool. I want to post. I want to redeploy the smart contract code. Um, Call it something else. Probably not. Don't call it Tornado Cash. Call it Verret Cash, maybe. But deploy it in the same way with the admin keys burned and everything replicated. I want to do all of that, but as an educational tool to teach people about privacy, to write about it, and to teach my students about how to use the right to financial privacy, the human right to financial privacy that they have, and how to use it if they're doing it on Ethereum. So I wrote to OFAC and I said, "This is what I want to do." I'm still waiting to hear back. They have posted guidance that says merely writing about and describing the protocol is not a prohibited thing.
What about providing a link?
Right? They don't answer that question. So they don't. Their guidance doesn't sufficiently answer my exemptive request. It's still pending, and I believe it,
So you have links. You even have, don't you even have like a website or do you have something deployed? Don't you?
not yet, but I want to. I've
Okay.
asked them for permission to do that. I haven't done
Okay.
anything yet, but if they don't,
Because your family doesn't want you to go to jail.
my family doesn't want me to jump. But if they don't give me the all everything I'm asking for, I'm prepared to sue them. I'm raising the money right now to file suit, and there are already two suits ongoing, so I have to figure out how it's strategically useful to the cause. But I am prepared to sue if they don't give me everything I want.
So when your book comes out, does anybody have to be nervous that if they get it, they could become, if they buy the book, they could be blacklisted?
I do love the idea of the book jacket saying this book was banned by the FBI. It would definitely help me sell. I'm trying to get the FBI to ban it so that I can put that on the book jacket. No, I mean, I've talked to people in law enforcement about the book. It's a book that would give people the tools to use money privately, which they have a right to do, every right to do. It's a book that could be used for nefarious purposes as well. It's a book that could be used by law enforcement and forensic investigators. I mean, any book about money laundering is also a book about how to launder money. All right, every book out there about anti-money laundering right now is a book. Every compliance manual on AML is also a book about how to launder money. So my book will share all the information. It'll be up to people to use it responsibly. Um, and hopefully, I'd love if the FBI said it should be banned. I'll definitely put that on the book jacket.
But touching on the divorce, for example.
Yeah,
So somebody could say, I was hacked, Your Honor, and sure, that's a defense. Somebody could also go to the bank, withdraw all their cash, put it in a suitcase in their house, and lo and behold, somebody came and stole it all.
right.
Or somebody could use the cash to buy, to buy $9,900 worth of like gold bars and store them and say, I don't know what happened to them. So, I mean, it's, I think with these things, your book explores all these different avenues and the consequences of private money, but it's not like we don't live in a society yet where cash itself has not be, cash is no longer a bearer instrument. Cash is a bearer instrument. So, much like anything that's a bearer instrument, it can be absconded with, it can be hidden. I mean,
Yeah,
maybe there's a volume aspect to it. Maybe there's a international jurisdictional component to it, but certainly cash and even moving money around banks has been used for decades. We're getting better at tracing it, but honestly, we're also pretty darn good about tracing, uh, Bitcoin to date. Chainalysis and Elliptic and TRM Labs have all been very effective at tracking it down in ways that even the ransomware operators hadn't anticipated.
yeah, those are all good points. I think it's really important to continue to make the point that you make about the freedoms that we have with cash that we should maintain and that we should also have with use of crypto. I don't. So that it's I'm interested in writing about how it's going to upend the justice system in some ways, but that that's not. I hope that doesn't feed into the point of people that say, "Oh, we should track it all." Right? I hope it's the opposite. I hope it's just this is like cash. It's probably a little bit. There's less friction in taking it all and hiding it because withdrawal from the bank is very high friction to get it all out. Right? If you show up and you want to take it, you're like, I want $500,000 right now in cash. Like, I'm not sure they'd even give it to you. Right? Although part of me wants to try it. And then the physical risk of storing it that you can avoid if you're using cold storage that you don't have if you've got cash that can burn that the rats can eat or whatever can happen. Um, uh, so that's one of the benefits of privacy if we can keep it, if we can maintain it. But it also is an interesting puzzle for forensics when bad guys are trying to use it and people are trying to lie to courts about it. But yeah, I'm an advocate of privacy, but I'm also interested in the technical issues of what happens when we eventually get to a world of true privacy. Um, and also some of the corollary issues, the secondary issues of even if we get to perfect privacy on chain, uh, it's still difficult to spend it privately. It still interacts with the fiat economy. You can turn it into gift cards. You can even turn it into non KYC gift cards. But who wants to live life like at $500 worth of gift cards per day, and that's all you can do, right? It's still just not possible to go fully on chain, fully private. Some people try to do it, live. Some people even claim to live their lives fully non KYC Bitcoin in a Bitcoin native economy. But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there are some communities there's a community in Vermont for anything. It sounds like maybe there's a KYC native community in Vermont. It's really hard. So those frictions when even private digital money interact with fiat are going to be a challenge for maintaining privacy too. So I want to explore that more.
Yeah, particularly when you're trying to onboard it back into the system.
Yeah.
So there's that. Um, Crypto Freedom Lab. This is the vehicle you're using to pursue these to fight these sanctions or to get the permission to get the license. I mean, you haven't sued them yet, so you've asked for permissions. But the Crypto Freedom Lab. You wanna tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that effort?
So I do a lot of policy work, and I'm trying to stand something up to do a few things. So I'm lucky to be at a law school that's very entrepreneurial. I think about half of our law professors run centers of some kind or another, or are affiliated with external think tanks and various organizations around DC to help not only generate scholarship grounded in the academy, but also have real world policy impact. So I'm trying to do the same thing, starting up a new think tank of my own, the Crypto Freedom Lab. I want to do a few things with it first. um, so, there's in defending crypto, and you've been really involved in this with a great comment letter to the SEC. Comment letters are one of the weapons in policy to that we're going to need to continue to do to defend crypto. You guys did it. You and Lex Punk Army and the crew did it. I think with some great stuff that you guys have talked about in a prior show.
ATS. Yep.
Yeah, ATS. So I want to do some comment letters.
Brandon and Jordan on. That was
yeah,
one of our
yeah,
episodes.
yeah. So I want to help do some comment letters myself and fund other people doing comment letters. I want to go even deeper than that. Think about like what are the academic papers that we wish we could cite in the comment letter. Let me fund that and get that done as well. And then strategic litigation. So this is amicus briefs is probably where I'll wade in first, and then big mega cases. If I can, frankly, if I can raise the money to do it, I want to be a plaintiff. I want my organization to be a plaintiff in litigation against the government. I want to get involved helping people when they need help. It's sad to see what they're doing to these guys at Coinbase. I think no matter what you think about what they did or not, I don't think they deserve the consequences that they're seeing. I think the same way about the.
You mean Wahi?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
I feel the same way about this case against the guy at OpenSea. No matter what you think about what he did or not, or what he's alleged to have done, he doesn't deserve a money laundering charge. I mean, absolutely not. That's not what the money laundering statute's about. I don't think it fits the elements of money laundering. And I don't like the idea that simple use of basic privacy tools is treated like money laundering. It's like saying because you put your money in a wallet instead of carrying it around in your hand, you were money laundering. So I want to get involved in the amicus briefs there too, and jump in to help criminal defendants, even in cases where in the future you might not like everything they did, but you feel like they're being overcharged. And I think prosecutors are handing out, um, throwing down indictments like candy on Halloween that include money laundering charges for everything crypto. And I think it's a terrible abuse of prosecutorial discretion. So I want to fight that.
So, one of the challenges, of course, in raising your Freedom Lab and doing all these things is, of course, money.
Yeah.
You know, the you know, in many ways, what you're fighting for is the true cypherpunk vision. You know, where are the dollars for that ultimately coming from? Like we certainly, and obviously I'm a fan of the crypto space, but not everybody actually shares the cypherpunk vision. Go figure. Who does?
Well, I am.
And who can fund it?
Yeah, that's the key question. Maybe your listeners can fund it, Eric. Um,
Okay, my listeners. So there we
yeah,
go. Well,
yeah,
we'll make sure to we'll make sure to post a link. Well, you can tell them the link now. You can tell at the end of the show. But even more broadly, like for the real dollars, where do you again? It's a challenge for any movement. Certainly one that the digital asset space has an interest in promoting because certainly you these are sort of the you know this is the front line, and we lose on these. It's just we continue to backpedal and lose a lot of the liberties that we don't necessarily associate with, like, oh, it's for somebody else, but yet it impacts all of us. Particularly if we don't fight for it at this end. But who is where does that who is the big promoter? Who cares enough to put the value up to try to push this forward?
well,
You obviously, but I mean
yeah,
just broader.
I can. I don't have the big money yet that I need, but I'm close. So what I've raised so far is modest. I did a Gitcoin round, and Gitcoin is great. Didn't raise a ton there, but raised a lot of awareness in the community. I started with what I know, that is libertarian foundations that have supported George Mason, that have supported libertarian think tanks in DC for a long time that I've worked at. So I've started with that community. And they care about crypto because they care about freedom. They come to crypto because of the libertarian ethos that pervades a lot of crypto. So I've started there. And I think in that community, I'll find the support I need to get moving. In terms of getting crypto support, um, look, I'd love to get some money from the DeFi world, but if the communities doesn't, if times are tough, it's bear market. If all I get from them from the leaders in that world is ideas and help and editing help and idea help from you, from everybody else in the community, then it'll be a blessing. So we've got a lot of friends at the Lex Punk crew. I want to hear from them about what I should be writing about, and I want to hear their feedback about where I'm wrong. They're very good at that, right? They're very good at crypto lawyers are awesome. They help, but it's also kind of trial by fire when you throw an idea out there, which is the best way to hone an idea. Um, and so I've started in the crypto side. My base is libertarian foundations and the libertarian community, which is very powerful, very strong, very well funded. And I'm reaching out to people who I admire on crypto Twitter, who are thoughtful, who are principled, who are like, even at big exchanges, you read their thoughts and you're like, wait, you're at a big exchange? You sound like a cypherpunk. Those are the people that I want help from and that I'm reaching out to. And hopefully it'll be enough. And, until I get the money I need, it'll just be a one man band. But I've done a few things.
No, you won't be a one man band. You just may not be a well funded multi
Right,
person band.
right.
I mean, I'll help out when I can as
Yeah,
well.
thanks, man.
It's just, but I wouldn't put myself in the category of big money.
Well,
um, so then you've also started a free crypto newsletter, and you've been pursuing the Zcash Foundation board of directors. How's that going? You're trying
yeah.
to get on the board there.
Yeah, there's the Zcash Foundation. I'm a huge fan of the technology, of the people, and they have an open spot on the Zcash Foundation board. Zcash Zcash community is there's a wide community, but in terms of organizations, they have the Electric Coin Company, which is Zuko's company. It's more the kind of commercial side of things, side of development. There's the Zcash Foundation, where some of the other that was created by some of the other creators of Zcash, and that also funds development of new projects on top of the Zcash blockchain and new technology that's part of the ecosystem. And then there's a Zcash Community Grants group that directly does some funding that's led by people from the community. So those three organizations right now are all funded by a piece of the mining block rewards called the Dev Fund. So it's an exciting organization, and I love Zcash. It's my favorite. As a, it's always been kind of my favorite privacy technology. I love using Zcash. There's not a lot of places to spend it and buy it, but I love to send people. I'll send you a private note over Zcash. I love the idea of sending an encrypted note that's going to live forever on the Zcash blockchain, but that nobody but you and I can read. So I'll send you maybe some dirty jokes or something if you send me your Z address. And if you don't have a Z address, we'll get you on board and get you a Z address.
I'll have to get a Z address,
You
that's
need
for
a Z
sure.
address. Well, all of your listeners need a Z address. So I would recommend right now use Y Wallet or Zec Wallet Lite and get you some Zcash. You can get it on exchange with the T address, but send it to your Z address, and then it's shadow money. For me, there's that one moment you come into crypto where the first time you send a significant amount of money, and you're like, wow, this is cool. Like, this is kind of scary, but this is powerful. I'm holding this in my hands. But for me, the second aha moment, and I think as crypto world learns they need more privacy than they have, is you send some Zcash somewhere to a Z address, and then you go look it up on the Block Explorer, and there's nothing. There's nothing there. And you're like, oh, that's even better. That's now I not only have private money, but I have a secret. I have a secret, and that's cool. Secrets are cool, and secrets are more than just cool. I mean, they're essential to modern life, right? So anyway, I love Zcash. I'd love to have the opportunity to serve. There's another. So we have a horse race now. So we have a second candidate in the race. A great guy from the Electronic Future Foundation that fights for privacy in in computer technology. So we have a horse race. We're going to do a call, both of us with the community, kind of talk about our perspectives, and then we'll have a community poll to see which of us will get on the board. And if that doesn't work out, I'll find other way to get more involved in Zcash, because it's my favorite crypto project, I have to say.
Awesome. How do you see the tension playing out between the need for forensic analysis in the context of, a government's push for a bad actor and privacy coins? I mean, you had the DOJ. I think they did a report, I guess about a year and a half ago or so, and they listed a number of different privacy coins. They called them out. Monero was one of them, I think. I got to check whether Zcash was part of it, but they basically expressed concern with mixers and privacy coins and the potential, for it being used for money laundering, but also terrorist activity. How do you see that tension between the need to conduct that forensic analysis playing out with regard to privacy coins?
Well, I've never seen an example of terrorists using crypto at all. So I think that's always been a red herring by law enforcement. Law enforcement uses a lot of red herrings in the AML and sanctions discussions. Those regimes are very ineffective at stopping crime. They stop like 0.5% of the UN estimates they stop 0.5% of illicit funding. The other 99.5% gets through just fine. And we go to all this trouble and billions of dollars in compliance costs for that. It's kind of
And you lump ransomware also together with the terrorist activity, right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's an issue. Um, my default position is the DOJ should absolutely investigate crime, and if you want to investigate crime, get a warrant. The Fourth Amendment and get a warrant. Anything else is just DOJ being lazy. You don't get to surveil my money and my transactions just because it makes it easier for you to conduct investigations. Get a warrant.
All right.
Good enough for the
Um,
it's good enough for DOJ now.
And so, and what about what are your thoughts about like immutability? So, like one of the things that you're seeing come up in the context of, I guess, the Stabenow and any of these, bills before Congress is this notion of, you know, if there's erroneous transaction, what happens to an erroneous transaction? Presumably, this creates like private shards where presumably centralized actors can hold it and have the ability to sort of reverse. What are your thoughts about that potential direction for crypto?
I mean, I just don't see any way. I think that's a core function of blockchains. I don't see any way around that. Um, so I would be suspicious of any blockchain that was not immutable. I'm not sure I'd want to use it. Uh, to the extent that there's a solution to that problem, it's the front ends and the UX to make it easy to make payments more secure. And I think a lot of people are trying to build the solution to that to make that more secure, so that I mean, it takes a lot of work to learn how to make a crypto payment. And I still sweat over comparing the public keys and being like X 1 1 3 3, right?
Yeah,
You're just sitting there. You're like, did I do it right? Let me do it again. Let me look again, right? And you send the $1, and you're like, it went there, but what if I just accidentally deleted an X, right, or something? So that it's hard to have universal adoption when that's still the only way to do it. But I think people are trying to build tools, wallets that are kind of less seed phrase based, which are obviously less secure but more usable. It seems like those are solutions that can work, but no, don't take away immutability. I think the whole thing falls apart if you take that.
yeah. What I suspect is, when you have a regulated centralized actor, there's probably going to be like a private chain that like acts like a side chain before you know publishing on the main chain.
But
And what's ever on the private chain presumably would be, you know, not final until it was published on the main chain. So
yeah, and I mean, it could end up being centralized actors, um, or just kind of giving you insurance for your payment out. And we don't mess with the immutability of the code, but they're just kind of insuring your payment out, which is not costless. Insurance is never costless. Usually, the
for sure.
consumers pay for it, right? But I'm sure we'll probably see that in regulation or something.
Um, so we've seen a lot of regulation by enforcement. Gurbir Grawal, he's the director of enforcement. He made this public speech, which
Yeah,
drives me nuts because he said, I say it 3 times. We don't regulate by enforcement. We don't regulate by enforcement. We don't regulate by enforcement. There, it's true. And then shortly after that there was BlockFi, and then there was Wahi, and then there was Belina. And I mean, you also have like beyond the SEC, the Jared case, and like BZX Uki, which we covered in our episode with Kayvon Sadeghi. What do you see about? I mean, certainly BlockFi wasn't a weak defendant. They must have, but they definitely had some. They definitely we'll say that the solution that they presented was in the context of an enforcement action and not something that they negotiated on the side and pursued. What do you think about the selection of potentially weak litigants and enforcement targets, and the implication for like how practitioners interpret what the law is in the space?
yeah. There's no question they're regulated by enforcement. Uh, you know, I think what we mean when we say that is, as securities lawyers, is we mean that tends to have a few attributes. It tends to involve novel theories of law, and that are pushed in settlements, because the SEC usually just announces the case when they settle the case. So they push a novel theory of law in the settlement. They use their leverage over a particular weak defendant, or maybe just kind of someone who can't afford the $500,000 it takes to win against the SEC, um, and they use that leverage to push a novel legal theory. They kind of trump up the legal theory in the settlement, like they have in, like one example is a settlement involving somebody doing airdrops, and they said, look, airdrops are a sale of a security, which is an incredible pushing of the envelope of the doctrine on what constitutes a sale or offer of a security, just to say, oh, airdrops are a sale easily. But they did that as part of a settlement with the defendant, who was kind of judgment proof, and who had, I mean, one of the shittiest of shit coins, right? And now they point to it and say, no, airdrops are all sales. See the settlement we had, right? But that's not even precedent. It's that, and it's also the procedural games, like what they're doing with Spooky DAO, and we'll serve you on the chat forum, and we hope nobody shows up. Thankfully, Lux Punk showed up, man, and Stephen Pally was like, "Yeah, I'm here. I'll
Yep.
argue," and that'll wake you up in the morning. Uh, but it's the procedural games and the pushing the envelope in doctrine and selecting weak defendants. It's that kind of the kind of procedural games that weaken the legitimacy of the agency. I forget, there was one former SEC chairman who said, "No honest man should ever fear the SEC." Um, when you have so many, when you have $1 million fine against Kim Kardashian for not disclosing the amount she was paid, though disclosing it was an advertisement, um, just weakens the legitimacy of the agency. And his video, Gary's video, doesn't help. Doesn't help. But I like this agency. I like when they go after frauds and cheats and major accounting frauds or Ponzi schemes or small penny stock schemes. And there's a lot of that kind of stuff in crypto that weakens the industry that we love. I'd love to see more cases against those people. But this kind of stuff, it just delegitimizes, legitimize, it challenges the legitimacy of the agency. That's the phrase I'm looking for. And you hate to see it, man.
It's funny. There is a game theoretic approach to regulation. The game theoretic approach says that you work with a component of the industry that you think is endeavoring to be compliant,
Mm-hmm.
and you then are able to focus on the part of the industry that is more problematic, and you try to make those distinctions early on in the process, so you have a partnering relationship, and the people you and the projects you partner with also become almost advocates against those who are not doing things as straightforward. And it's actually a much more effective way of regulating. Certainly, when they're prosecuting fraud, that was, I think we had Yuseva Guleva. I'm going to mess up her name. It's driving me nuts, but Yulila Guseva
Yeah.
on the podcast. She did a number of papers on this, and basically the SEC was far more effective when they were going after frauds than later on when they decided to go after these nickel and dime registration, violations. And honestly, what did it accomplish? Did it prevent Terra? Did it prevent 3 Hours Capital? What did it actually prevent? It didn't. The fundamental mission of the agency wasn't being pursued. Instead, these sort of procedural registration violations. Not to say that that there might have been that these procedural violations with targets that could have endeavored to comply, with more clear disclosure. It just was, there's something like that. There was a chance missed, right? So the purpose of this, I'm not really just trying to slam on the SEC. I'm saying that there was an opportunity missed,
Yeah.
where they could have partnered. They could have made things a little clearer instead of just simply always beating on it, almost like as a way to like, it was almost a political move
Yeah.
to try to curry favor, to try to better position Gensler for other roles, and they missed that opportunity. The playbook would have been divide, divide the industry, work with certain players and give that pathway versus taking everything on and just being, what I would say, largely ineffective. I mean, they can't do an end zone dance like Kim Kardashian when the whole crypto market's down and projects, a number of projects are just, from an economic perspective, may not be proceeding.
Yeah. There's a so one of the things I asked in January, I sent him a public request for rulemaking. Just open up a call for comment about regulation of crypto and just hear from all the smart lawyers in the space. Why not just do that? I mean,
Do a concept release.
yeah, do a concept release. Yeah,
Could have done it earlier.
yeah. But I mean, it
You know,
just leads you.
people would have been unhappy, but at least the voices get heard. I mean, listen, we all know regulations coming. That's really not the issue, right?
Yeah, and there's lots of things we should. I mean, this is reflected in the Reg X proposal and in others. There are things we'd like to know about crypto projects that aren't in Reg SK or Reg SX, even if they're registered. Tokenomics and are the whales dumping and security audits of the protocol. That stuff is not in Reg SK, and that's what we actually need to know about. We don't need to know about half the stuff that's in there. And they don't have boards again, and they don't have CFOs and stuff
Right.
like
Hey.
that. It's
Yeah, BlockStack was like, why am I a security again? Block one, BlockStack.
Yeah, and how much did they spend for their failed Reg A offering? They spent like a couple $1,000,000.
Yeah. Boy,
So if the rule is the only way to build a protocol is to spend $2 million in compliance, it's not gonna work. It's gonna be like crowdfunding, which is, I mean, to be honest, like kind of a joke at this point.
yeah.
The market
Well,
cap for crowdfunding in New Zealand is larger than the market cap for crowdfunding in the United States. That's a regulatory failure. I don't want to see that happen to crypto.
yeah. Well. I mean, listen. I did do a podcast on crowdfunding.
Okay.
I'm not as despondent on the possibilities for crowdfunding.
Okay.
You can raise 5 million a year, and that's not exclusive of Reg D. So I actually think if you're a struggling project, that's an option. I do think that the lack of a secondary market for those projects is one of the inhibitors of it long term. But anyway, so let's how do you see like going back to this forensics field as a former accountant, and we touched on it. How do you see this field of forensics evolving as it relates to crypto?
Well, one of the ways in which so I'm a practicing forensic accountant, and one of the ways I get involved in that is people who, if they read the book, that once my book's published, it's going to be a while before it's published, but if they read my book and they did everything right, they would get away with everything, but they won't. The vast majority of people won't. They will make some mistake along the way, and I think forensic experts can come in and help. So mostly at this point, a lot of it's about divorce cases, and it's a pretty simple effort of just using block explorers and a combination of subpoenas to exchanges and block explorers, and then saying, hey, there have been about 4 or 5 hops. Is this public key yours? And then like, oh, I must have forgot to mention that in the divorce filing. So that's pretty simple. If people get smart and they start using coin joins or privacy coins, then it'll be a lot more complicated. But as
They use the term coin joins.
yeah, coin joins. That's Whirlpool, which
Okay.
I would say is a lot more effective than using centralized mixers.
And how does Whirlpool work?
So Whirlpool, it has a pool of bitcoins in the Whirlpool, and you put yours in, and it goes in a coin join transaction, and it comes back out. And what I love about the Samurai wallet is it's designed to work with Whirlpool and to coin join your coins in. It is a Bitcoin privacy wallet created by the people who've been thinking about Bitcoin privacy since 2013. So, like the diehards, everything about it is privacy by default. From the default of using using Tor to connect to Whirlpool, so your transactions go through Tor by default. It generates new addresses for every time there's a movement of anything. It generates a new Bitcoin address, so you're never reusing addresses. It doesn't let you when you have change, right? It doesn't let you spend the change in a way that the unmixed change might be used to connect to the mixed coins, and thus leave some transaction history that would make it traceable. And then on the way out, it also uses Stonewall to kind of do a few hops between different addresses, so that on the way out, it adds additional obscurity. So I love it. I like to tell people crypto privacy is like a game of hide and go seek. If you want to hide, stay hidden. Don't poke your head up. Don't move around. Right? Privacy is about staying still, hiding and staying still. So you got to keep your assets shielded for a long period of time. Otherwise, it becomes statistically a lot easier to connect the shielding transaction and the unshielding transaction, including that could happen on chain or that could also happen fiat on ramp and fiat off ramp. So there'll be room for forensic analysis and kind of net worth analysis. Did you suddenly $1 million disappeared 3 years ago? Suddenly it appeared now. Then I can infer that it was hidden in crypto for a while. So that kind of net worth analysis and trying to statistically link shielding with unshielding is probably, I think, most of the game in forensic analysis of crypto. That and technical analysis, which you get a chain analysis subscription and you play with their tools, which I don't have because I have some philosophical issues with chain analysis and some of the things they do. But yeah, I think that's how forensic analysis will work. Um, but if you do it right, you can avoid that.
And do you think it's a area that's going to start getting a lot of hires? Is that a big growth area for prospectively?
Yeah, I do. I do.
Excellent. Now you worked with Jay Clayton, correct?
He put me on the SEC's Investor Advisory Committee, which is um, meets once a quarter, debates ideas, and so yeah, I did that and got to know him through that, and debated crypto with him quite a few times. Yeah,
And how do you view his approach versus Gary Gensler? I know you're probably like most probably have a little more visceral reaction to Gary versus Jay, but how do you think how do you contrast their worldviews and what they brought to the commission?
yeah. Well, I think he cared. Jake cared about getting it right. He cared about not politicizing the commission, and I don't think that's true, of Gary, unfortunately. And I think every since I've been a securities lawyer since 2007, every chairman I've seen has cared about the agency, cared about trying to avoid politics to the extent they can, which it's hard, but trying to avoid it. Mary Shapiro and Mary Jo White were very much, they were securities lawyers first before they were kind of DC operatives. Um, Gary's a DC operative; he's not a securities lawyer, so I don't think he cares about doctrine the way I do and the way they did, and the way Jay did. Of course, I disagree with his approach to crypto. I disagree with the Ripple case, and I wish he had done more to provide some kind of regulatory exemption for crypto fundraising. I understand how in 2017 he look over the ICO landscape and say, "Whoa, there's a lot of junk here," because there was a lot of trash coins, right? Um, but I think, and there was some helpful guidance. I mean, the fact that there's paper that says decentralization can obviate the Howey test, that's helpful. Nobody had done that before, and Gary won't say that now, but it's helpful. It wasn't enough, but it was something. But I hope they lose the Ripple case. And now, I mean, there's just so far there's been nothing helpful.
Right. Agreed. Well, so people want to learn more about the Crypto Freedom Lab.
Yeah,
Where would they go?
yeah. Go to follow my Twitter account at JW and I'm always I always have a lot of opinions about policy and other things. And you can go to cryptofreedomlab.com. We're going to be it's another way to follow me, and you can donate using Monero and Zcash as well. You can donate privately if you like. Um, I think I've raised about 50 cents worth of Monero so far. So uh, yeah, and hopefully we'll have a lot more updates coming for y'all. And thanks for having me on, man. I love the podcast.
There you go. All right. Thanks so much, JW.
Thank you, Eric.